It was past midnight. The sound of laughter had faded from the studio lot. Most of the cast and crew were already gone. Headlights flickered in the distance, then disappeared into the Los Angeles night. Ana de Armas stood alone near the curb. Her phone had died hours ago. Her driver, delayed or perhaps confused, was not answering. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as a chilly breeze passed through the empty parking lot. Her heels clicked softly on the pavement as she paced, trying to stay warm and keep calm. It had been a long day of shooting. Her scenes had run late, and while others had already wrapped and gone home, she had pushed through, determined to finish. Now, as the sky grew darker and the silence around her deepened, she began to feel something she rarely let herself feel: stranded, small, forgotten. A security guard had passed by earlier and offered to call someone, but she had smiled and said she'd be fine. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want anyone to think she couldn't handle herself. But inside, a quiet ache was growing. The kind that comes when you've worked hard all day and suddenly realize no one is coming for you. A black car pulled up. But it wasn't for her. A few other crew members laughed as they got in and drove off. She tried not to let her face show anything, but her eyes told a story. She looked down at her hands. They were cold. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Calm, slow, steady. "Hey," a quiet voice said. She turned. It was Keanu Reeves. He wore a dark jacket and jeans, nothing flashy. He looked like he always did. Calm, grounded, kind. "You okay?" he asked. Ana nodded quickly. Yes. "I'm just waiting for my ride." Keanu glanced at the lot. It was almost empty. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood beside her for a moment, looking out into the dark road ahead. Then he said softly, "You need a lift?" Ana hesitated. Pride and politeness collided in her chest. "I mean, I don't want to trouble you." "It's not trouble," he said. "I'm heading out anyway." There was something in his voice. Not pity, not obligation, just quiet sincerity. It disarmed her. "Okay," she said, almost whispering, "Thank you." He nodded and led the way toward his car, an old, quiet sedan, not what people would expect a Hollywood actor to drive. He opened the door for her, then walked around to the driver's side. Inside the car, silence settled. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, like a pause in the chaos of the day. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to fill the silence, just drove. Ana looked out the window. The city lights blurred as they passed. Her mind wandered not to the movie, not to her agent or the next audition, but to this simple moment. This strange kindness. She wondered how many people would have driven past and not said a word. Keanu turned the radio on low. Gentle acoustic song played, barely above a whisper. It added a softness to the night. "You hungry?" he asked, glancing over without taking his eyes off the road. She smiled, surprised. A little. He pulled into a small corner diner. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a flickering neon sign. "Best pie in town," he said simply. They sat in a booth near the window. The waitress didn't seem to recognize them, or maybe she just didn't care. That was part of the magic, being unnoticed in a world that always watched. They didn't talk much. A few laughs here and there, but mostly they just sat, ate, and shared silence. When they finished, he paid. No fuss. No talk of splitting the bill. "Thank you," Ana said again as they walked back to the car. He smiled. "You're welcome." He dropped her at her building's front entrance. The street was quiet, the city slowing down. Before she got out, she turned to him. "You didn't have to do any of this," he shrugged. "You looked like you needed someone." She opened the door but stopped. "Why don't more people notice when someone needs help?" He looked at her, thoughtful. Maybe they do. Maybe they just wait for someone else to go first. She stepped out and closed the door gently. He didn't drive off right away. He waited until she was inside, until the door shut behind her. Then he turned, drove away, and never mentioned it again. On set the next day, he greeted her the same way he always did. Calm, kind, respectful. As if the night before had been nothing. No story to tell. No favor to remember. but Anna remembered because sometimes the kindest acts are the ones no one talks about. The next morning, Anna walked onto the set with her usual quiet grace. She smiled at the crew, nodded at the director, and took her seat by the makeup trailer. But something in her eyes was different. Not tiredness, not sadness. Something softer. Something that made her seem more grounded. She hadn't told anyone what happened the night before. Not her assistant, not her manager, not even her close friend on set. It wasn't a secret. Not exactly. It was just something too personal, too kind, too rare to throw into casual talk. She didn't want it turned into gossip. She wanted to. Hold it close. Keanu arrived later. He walked in with a calm step, holding a cup of black coffee. He greeted the lighting guy by name, smiled at the costume assistant, and gave a respectful nod to Anna as he passed. No mention of the ride, no mention of the pie. Just the same steady presence he always brought. But Anna felt it, a quiet thread, connecting them. Not romantic, not dramatic, just human. They had shared something that night. Not just a ride, not just a meal, but a moment where one person saw another not as a star or a coworker or a name in lights, but as someone simply. Trying to get home, Anna went through the day's scenes with sharp focus. The director praised her for her emotional depth. "There's something new in your performance today," he said. "It feels more honest." She nodded politely, but inside she knew why. Something about that quiet drive had reminded her of what real connection looked like. Not forced, not rehearsed, just real. After a long day of filming, the sun began to dip below the horizon. The crew packed up slowly. People joked and shared weekend plans. Anna stood by the trailer, pulling on her sweater. This time her driver had arrived. She could see the black car waiting at the gate. But before walking away, she glanced around for Keanu. He was standing under a tree, talking to a grip about motorcycles. The wind moved gently through his hair. He looked relaxed. She wanted to say something. Maybe thanks again. Maybe you were right about the pie. Maybe even you didn't. Have to do that? But she did. Instead, she walked up beside him, waited for a pause in the conversation, and simply said, "See you Monday." He turned to her, gave a small smile, and replied, "See you Monday." And that was it. Later that night, Anna sat at her kitchen table with a glass of tea, looking out at the city below. Her apartment was high above the noise, but she could still see people moving, cars flowing like rivers of light. So many lives, so many stories. She thought about the kind of man who would offer a ride without expecting anything, who would sit quietly in a diner without trying to impress, who would listen more than talk, and who would never bring it up again. She opened her notebook, the one she kept not for scripts, but for thoughts she didn't say out loud. And she wrote, "Sometimes you meet someone who doesn't try to fix you or rescue you or teach you. They just sit beside you and make you feel less alone. I think that's what kindness really is." She didn't name him. She didn't need to. Monday came, and filming resumed. There were new scenes, new blocking, new lines to learn. Anna and Keanu shared a few more screen moments. Their characters argued in one scene, embraced in another. The crew clapped after a powerful take, but the two actors stayed in character. Breathing together in silence for a few extra seconds. During lunch, Anna sat alone at a small table in the corner of the lot. Most people sat in groups, scrolling. Their phones or telling stories. Keanu approached quietly and set down his tray across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She smiled. Not at all. They ate mostly in silence. Then he asked, "You ever get tired of this?" "The industry?" she asked. He nodded. She took a moment, then said, "Sometimes, not the acting, just the part where people forget you're a person." Keanu leaned back slightly, thoughtful. "Yeah, it can make you feel invisible. Or worse, only seen for what you can give." She nodded. "Last week, when I didn't have a ride, I felt invisible for a moment. Then you showed up." He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her with quiet understanding. Then he said, "I know what that feels like. I've been on both sides of it. Anna looked at him, curious. What side are you on now? He paused, then answered, I try to be the one who notices. Her eyes softened. She whispered, You are. A few days later, the cast was called in for a late-night shoot. The scene required tired expressions, subtle emotion, quiet tension. It wasn't hard. Most of them were already feeling it. Long hours, heavy makeup, hot lights. During a break, Anna sat on the steps of the soundstage, head resting against the wall. Her eyes were half closed. The night breeze drifted in through the open doors. Keanu walked over and sat beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. After a while, she said softly, This business can be lonely. He nodded. That's why the small things matter. She turned to him. What if more people noticed the small things? He looked up at the night sky. Then maybe fewer people would feel alone. A voice called out, Time to resume. Stood together and walked back inside. No one watching would have known the quiet bond they shared. There was no headline, no post, no interview clip. Just two people choosing to notice each other. And in a world that moves fast and forgets often, that was more than enough. The morning was heavy with gray clouds as Anna arrived on set. Her car rolled to a gentle stop just outside the studio gates. She thanked the driver with a soft smile, stepped out, and took a deep breath. The air smelled like rain, though none had fallen yet inside. The crew buzzed about, preparing lights and props. Everyone seemed in a rush. There was a sense of pressure today, a tight shooting schedule, last-minute rewrites, and a director who had barely slept. Anna made her way to the makeup trailer. She looked calm on the outside, but inside she was holding her breath. Today's scene was a big one. Raw emotions. No stunt doubles. All eyes would be on her. Keanu was already on set. Ow. He stood quietly near a prop table, reading the day's script. Pages of pencil tucked behind his ear. He didn't look stressed. He never did. He carried a stillness that seemed to settle the space around him. Anna caught his eye from across the room. He gave her a small nod. She nodded back. Then came the whispers. They started small, as whispers often do. A makeup artist asked another if she'd heard about Anna's late-night ride the other week. Someone from wardrobe added that Keanu had been seen with her at a diner. No pictures, no proof, just quiet voices connecting dots. Anna felt it before she heard it. The shift in energy. A few glances, pause in conversation when she entered a room. She knew this game. She had seen it before. How simple kindness was turned into gossip. How people turned quiet moments into noisy stories. She didn't blame them. Not really. People like to fill in blanks. They like to create romance out of silence, mystery out of stillness. But this was different. This was something that mattered to her. And she didn't want it twisted. During rehearsal, she tried to stay focused, but her mind kept drifting. She wondered if Keanu had heard the whispers. She wondered if he cared. As they ran through lines, the director asked them to pause. More tension, he said. I want to feel like your characters are hiding something. Anna looked at Keanu, and for a moment, she didn't have to act. After the scene, they took a break outside. Anna sat on the low steps beside the soundstage. Her arms wrapped around her knees. Keanu joined her after a few minutes. He sat without a word. Finally, she said, They're talking. He nodded slowly. I figured they would. Wasn't even a big deal, she added quietly. You just gave me a ride. Keanu was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't mind what they say. I just hope it doesn't make you feel small. She looked at him, eyes glassy. I'm not ashamed of that night. It was the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. He gave her a soft smile, then let the noise pass. But Anna wasn't sure it would pass. Not in this world. Not in Hollywood. Later that day, she overheard two producers talking near the catering table. One of them said, I think there's something going on between them. The other laughed and replied, Well, if there isn't, there will be. People like that don't just drive each other home. Anna walked away before they noticed her in her trailer. She sat on the small couch and stared at the wall. Part of her wanted to go back out and say something, defend herself. Tell the truth. But another part, the stronger part, told her to wait. Kindness didn't need defending. Not always. A knock came at the door. "It's open," she said. Softly, Keanu stepped in. He looked at her gently. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Just tired." He sat on the arm of the chair across from her. "I know they're talking," she sighed. "I hate that something simple turns into this." He thought for a moment, then said, "You know what helps me?" She looked up. "I remind myself that what's true doesn't need to shout." Anna tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "Real kindness," he said, "doesn't need to be explained. And real friendship isn't afraid of what people think. We know what happened. We know what it meant." She smiled gently. "You're good at this. Saying the right thing?" He shrugged. "I just speak when it matters." The next day, something surprising happened. A veteran grip named Leo, who had worked on hundreds of films, walked up to Anna during a break. He was older, rough around the edges, always chewing gum. He looked at her and said, "Heard some folks talking, but I just wanted to say you've always been kind to the crew. We see it?" She blinked, surprised. "Thank you." He nodded and walked off, as if it were nothing. But to Anna, it meant everything. By the end of the week, the whispers had started to fade. Not because people stopped caring, but because Anna and Keanu never gave them anything to add. They didn't act different. They didn't explain. They just stayed who they were. And in the quiet of that decision, something powerful happened. Respect grew. The crew saw it. The director saw it. Even those who had gossiped saw it. There was something real between the two of them. Not the flashy. Kind, not the type that made headlines. But the kind that reminded people what dignity looked like. In a place where stories were written for the spotlight, theirs was written in the quiet. And sometimes, those were the stories that lasted longest. The scene called for pain. Not the kind of pain that made characters scream or cry loudly, but the quiet kind. The kind that lived behind the eyes. It's the kind that could sit in a person's soul for years and only show itself when no one was looking at. Was a key part of the film, a soft, emotional conversation between Anna and Keanu's characters. The script described it as a moment of silence where everything is said without a word. They were rehearsing late that afternoon, just before sunset. The lighting crew adjusted soft amber lights to mimic the glow of golden hour. The director stood quietly behind the monitor, watching every movement with focused eyes. Anna sat on the edge of the bed set, her character feeling lost, defeated. Keanu's character entered the scene and sat beside her, neither of them speaking. And something happened. The silence between them wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't even in the script. But it stretched long, deep, and real. Anna didn't look at Keanu right away, and when she finally did, something inside her shifted. She wasn't thinking about the cameras. She wasn't thinking about the crew. She was remembering that quiet ride home, that warm diner. That night, when someone showed up not to save her, but just to be there. Keanu looked back at her, and his expression wasn't a performance. It was care. Real, grounded, gentle care. The director didn't yell cut. He just whispered, let. It breathed. After the scene ended, no one moved for a few seconds. Then the crew softly clapped, not out of habit, but out of awe. The cinematographer leaned in and said, "We got it." Anna sat still, even after the camera stopped. She felt the weight of the moment in her chest. Not heavy like sadness, but full, like something important had just passed between them. Later, as they were walking off set, Anna said quietly, "That didn't feel like acting." Keanu glanced at her. "That's because it wasn't." They walked in silence for a while. Then Anna stopped and turned toward him. "Why don't you talk about the good things you do?" she asked. He looked thoughtful, because the moment you talk about them, they stop being about the other person. Anna stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You're different." He smiled softly. "So are you." The next few days on set felt lighter. Not because things got easier, but because something had shifted in the air. Anna noticed more people saying kind things to each other, Crew member helped a new assistant without being asked. Someone brought extra coffee for the stunt team. Small things. Quiet things. But noticeable. It was as if one silent act of kindness had started a ripple. On the third night, the director invited the cast and key crew to a private dinner. He wanted to celebrate the halfway mark of filming. The restaurant was quiet and elegant. With dim lights and soft music, Anna arrived early and sat at a small table near the corner. She wore a simple dress, no jewelry, no makeup. Need it. She looked peaceful. Keanu arrived a little later, nodded politely to everyone, and took the seat beside her. I didn't plan it. It just happened, during the dinner. The director stood to give a toast. I've worked on many sets, he began, but this one feels different. It feels human. And that's because of the people sitting here tonight. He looked at Anna and Keanu, especially these two. They've reminded all of us what quiet professionalism and deep respect look like. Not through big speeches or drama, but through consistency, through stillness, through care. Anna felt her eyes burn slightly. She wasn't used to public praise. She often tried to blend in, not stand out. But this time, she allowed herself to feel it. Keanu raised his glass, but said nothing, just smiled. After the dinner, as they stepped out into the cool night, Anna turned to him and said, "You knew people would talk. You knew they'd twist it." Keanu nodded. "And you still helped me that night." He looked at her. That night wasn't about them. It was about you. She took a deep breath. "I'm really glad you did." A beat passed. Then he said, "Me too." They didn't hug. They didn't pose for a picture. They just stood on the sidewalk, to people under a streetlight, with the noise of the city in the distance and a quiet kind of understanding between them. In the days that followed, a strange thing happened. A reporter from a gossip site emailed Anna's agent. Someone had sent in an anonymous tip about her late-night outing with Keanu. They wanted a statement, maybe even a photo. Anna's agent forwarded her the message and asked, "Do you want me to handle this?" Anna thought about it. Then she replied, "No statement." "Are you sure?" her agent wrote back. "People are going to say things either way," Anna typed slowly. "Then let them talk." We put her phone down and smiled, because she finally understood what Keanu meant. What's true doesn't need to shout. The morning sun painted soft golden lines across the windows of the studio lot. The air was quiet, almost too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Anna arrived earlier than usual. She walked slowly, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. Something about the day felt different. Though she couldn't say why, as she neared the soundstage, she saw a few crew members huddled around a table. They looked worried. Pages were scattered across it, held down by coffee mugs and tape. The script supervisor rushed over. "Has anyone seen page 74? He asked loudly. "We had it this morning, the one with the memory flashback scene. It's missing." Anna froze for a second. Page 74 was a key scene. It was a tender, emotional flashback. Her character's childhood, her connection to her father, her deepest emotional shift in the movie. Without it, the entire sequence would fall apart. Keanu arrived shortly after, holding a paper cup of tea. He listened as the team explained what happened. "We checked the printers, folders, the trailers. Nothing," the assistant said. "We don't have a digital backup either. It was handwritten by the director last night. Only one copy." Keanu asked simply, "When did you last see it?" "About 3 hours ago," the script supervisor said. "I laid it here on the table. Went to grab coffee, came back, and it was gone." Anna stepped forward. "Could someone have taken it by mistake?" Everyone looked around, unsure. The director walked in, rubbing his eyes. "We can't delay this scene," he said. "It's scheduled. The lighting's ready. The setup took hours. We have to shoot it today." Anna felt her stomach tighten. Without that page, she wouldn't know how to approach the performance. Every line mattered. Every beat of emotion was written in a certain rhythm. She sat quietly on the edge of a bench and took a deep breath. Her mind went to Keanu, like it often did when things felt messy. He was walking toward her now, calm and steady. "We'll figure it out," he said gently. Anna nodded. "I just don't want to mess this up." He sat beside her. "What was the scene about?" "My character," she said softly. Was remembering a night her father waited outside her school in the rain? He didn't say a word. He just stood there with an umbrella. She realized, even when no one said anything, he was always there for her. Keanu looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "You can still do the scene," he said. "Double quotes how?" she asked. "We don't have the words." He paused. "Then speak from memory, from feeling, not lines." She looked into his eyes, surprised. "Use the truth," he said. "What it felt like to be seen, to be protected." Her eyes stung, because that's what he had done for her that night when she had no ride. He hadn't said much. He hadn't made it a big gesture. He'd just been there. And somehow, that had changed something in her. The director called them in. "We'll go without the page," he announced. "Do it raw. Do it real." The cameras rolled. Anna sat alone on the couch set, the rain machine tapping gently on the fake windows. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and remembered not just the script, but her life, her childhood, her struggles. The night she felt small on the sidewalk with no one around, and the man who showed up quietly and asked, "You need a lift?" The tears in her eyes weren't acting. They were memory, truth, gratitude. Keanu entered the scene as her character's memory of her father. He didn't speak, just stood. Behind her, holding an invisible umbrella in the rain, calm, silent, present. The camera lingered. The director whispered, "Cut." No one moved. One by one, the crew slowly clapped. When Anna stood up, her cheeks were still wet. Keanu handed her a towel without a word. That, the director said, walking over, was more powerful than anything I could have written. Anna looked at Keanu. "You gave me that scene?" Shook his head. "You already had it. You just had to trust yourself." Later, as the crew packed up, someone found the missing page tucked between two thick prop books in the corner of the set. It had been misplaced, not stolen. It's an honest mistake. But by then it didn't matter. The scene had already been shot. Perfectly. Truthfully. Without needing the page. As the sun began to set, Anna walked out of the studio, carrying her coat. The evening breeze brushed past her. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. Keanu walked beside her. "Where's your driver today?" he asked casually. She smiled, taking the day off. He glanced at her. "You offering a ride?" Teased, he smiled back. Always. He didn't speak much during the drive. The city lights flickered outside the window, and the soft hum of the tires filled the silence. Anna looked over at him. "Why do you always know what to say when I'm falling apart?" Keanu kept his eyes on the road. "Because I've been there." She reached over and gently touched his hand. "Just for a moment, thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied. But she did. Because that scene, that moment, that feeling, none of it would have happened without him. And the world would never know. But she would. The final week of filming arrived quietly. There were no fireworks, no countdowns, no loud reminders that the story was about to end. Just the steady hum of cameras, the clicking of boots on the studio floor, and a cast that had spent months becoming a silent family. Anna stood outside her trailer, holding the final version of the script in her hand. The sun was soft overhead. She squinted up at the sky, then down at the script's last page. Her name wasn't in the final scene. She would be wrapped before the others. That knowledge sat strangely in her chest. She didn't fear goodbyes. She just never liked them. Especially not with people who had seen her in her weakest, quietest moments. Especially not with Keanu. He had become her mirror in some way. Calm, steady, unshaken. Never loud, never pushing. Just present. Just kind. Ina's last scene was shot on a small, dimly lit set, her character sitting alone in a train, leaving the city. The director wanted real tears, but he didn't ask for them. He knew they'd come, and they did. Not because of the story on paper, but because of everything Anna had lived through off it. Because of the late-night ride, the diner, the quiet advice. The moments no camera had captured, but that had shaped her more than any role. When the scene ended, the crew clapped. The director hugged her gently and said, "Thank you for giving us more than what was written." Anna walked off set, tears still on her face. and stepped into the quiet hallway outside. Keanu was standing there. He hadn't been called for that scene. He didn't need to be there, but he was. She stopped a few feet from him. "You stayed," she said softly. "I wanted to be here when you walked out." A long pause stretched between them. "It's strange," she said, "to feel more connected to someone after sharing silence than after sharing 100 conversations." He nodded. "Silence tells the truth." Ina looked down at her hands. "I don't know how to say goodbye." Keanu shook his head. "And don't." She looked up. "Just say thank you," he said. "That's all I ever want." She stepped forward, and for the first time since they met, she hugged him. A real hug. Not a press photo. Not an on-set rap celebration. A human hug. Keanu held her gently, and neither of them said anything. When they stepped back, her eyes were full. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "Anytime." They didn't take a photo. They didn't post it online. They didn't tell anyone else. That's how it had always been between them. Unspoken. Simple, real. Anna left the studio that night in her own car, the driver quiet as he took her through the glowing streets of Los Angeles. She looked out the window at the passing lights and thought about how some moments never need to be recorded to be remembered. 2 weeks later, the cast gathered for a private screening of the film. As the credits rolled and the lights came up, there was a hush in the room. Not because the film was perfect, but because something in it felt true. The director stood at the front and said, "This movie taught me something, that the most powerful stories don't need to be loud. They just need to be honest." After the event, reporters crowded the lobby, asking questions, snapping photos. A journalist approached Anna with a bright smile. "Anna, people have been asking, what was the secret to the chemistry between you and Keanu?" She thought about the question. Then she smiled softly. "Just kindness," she said. "And the ability to sit beside someone when they need it most. No gossip, no explanations. It's just the truth." Later that night, Anna sat alone in her apartment. Sipping tea by the window, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I saw the movie. You were honest. Thank you for trusting the silence." She smiled. "It was him," she typed back. "I learned from the best." And she never told anyone about the ride home again, because some stories aren't meant to be shared for the world. Some are just meant to be lived.